Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of the Kiln Rendez-Vous. Today is a very special episode because for beginning of the year we've been talking about ETH as economic security to secure other protocols, and this is the second episode of I would think a long series of interviews where we're going to have builders on that are using Bitcoin as economic security. So I want to welcome Brendon Sedo from CoreDAO. Nice to meet you. Hey, Brendon.
Thanks, Edgar. Appreciate the opportunity. We've had the pleasure of being on a couple panels, I think, together. So excited to chat with you because you're really deep into Bitcoin.
Yeah, this is not our first discussion, but I will pretend like I don't know much about Core. So I will do a lot of the asking and you will be answering all of my questions. So first and foremost, I want to congratulate you and the CoreDAO team because you've recently reached an impressive milestone of 7.9 thousand Bitcoins staked on Core, which is extremely impressive. So first, like, congrats. And to kick things off, like, I would love for you to talk a bit about, like, what is your background in blockchain and how did you start this journey with CoreDAO?
Yeah, sure. I don't normally love to talk about myself, so we'll keep this somewhat short. But Brendon, my name is Brendon. I'm one of the initial contributors at Core. I've been with the project for about 2.5 years. So I was before mainnet launch, kind of really early, small team. Before that, I'd been in tech for about 15 years or so. Previously, I founded a company called Joist. That was my second company, but Joist was a software tool in the construction space that helped basically residential contractors manage their business in the field, processed over billions in payments, billions in invoices, and it became one of the biggest products used by construction contractors around the world. So scaled that as a founder, raised a couple rounds of funding, and sold it in 2018 to a group backed by Silver Lake, and which eventually went public a year later. So that was really exciting, and kind of my MBA in a way, where I learned a lot of different things about business and how to scale a company that makes money. And then on the side, I was always just interested in dabbling with crypto. If you'd been a tech founder, if you were in tech in the early 2010s, everyone was talking about Bitcoin at every meetup. So it was just something that you couldn't really ignore. So it was definitely dabbling early on. Eventually, after selling my company, had a bit more time. And at that point, the ecosystem in ETH had matured. So played around with a lot of DeFi protocols and, used hardware wallets, et cetera, which was pretty exciting as to what you could actually do, which, I actually paired back to some things in my previous company, Joist. And then, long story short, I took some time off my last company. I was looking to start something new in the Web3 space, was kind of a heavy Bitcoiner, and got connected with the folks contributing at Core, knew a couple of them from my previous life as a startup founder. A lot of folks that I thought were building the right way. They'd already built up this huge Satoshi community. They knew how to scale businesses. It wasn't their first rodeo, and the values were aligned. So jumped on board 2.5 years ago, initially as just like a generalist business guy. The team was mainly technical at that point. And since then, we've really scaled the team of contributors around the world. And I think we're still early, but it's been a pretty wild ride.
Super cool. And can you share a bit about, like, what was the original vision behind Core? Like, what was the kind of the problem statement that Core was looking to solve?
Yeah, so the idea was spurred, quite some time ago when ETH decided to move to full proof of stake. I think there was interesting debates at that time. The thinking was the thinking from some of the core contributors at that time was that was a mistake. So the thinking was, ETH brought all this composability, smart contracts, apps. The app learned all these possibilities, but Bitcoin had this fair launch, decentralization, security, and didn't really compromise on those fundamentals. So the initial thinking was, is there a means of combining the best aspects of Bitcoin with this newly found composability from ETH and EVM into one new chain? So that's what kind of sparked the initial concept. And I guess the mission is, to basically combine the best of both of those worlds and really unlock utility for Bitcoin. Because if you think of Bitcoin today, you've got this, especially after today, market cap is massive. There's a lot of liquidity that's generally been stuck there, and you can't really do a lot with it, right? You can basically send, receive, store, or do a bunch of private trading strategies. There's no DeFi, there's no native yield, etc. So the thinking with Core is, how can we unlock that liquidity and actually do things on chain with it by leveraging EVM? So that's when we launched Core Chain to solve that mission, bring utility to Bitcoin, bring native yield to Bitcoiners, and bring in a second emission to Bitcoin miners. So Core itself is an EVM compatible chain that's secured by Bitcoin. So again, as I mentioned, Bitcoiners can stake. They get a risk-free yield on their Bitcoin for helping secure the network, which I think we'll jump into. And then just as importantly, the miners delegate hash rate, right? So it basically brings in the miners who are crucial to the Bitcoin network and the security and decentralization of Bitcoin into the Core network as well, helps decentralize Core Chain, and they earn a secondary emission for delegating their hash rate as well.
Yeah, so like you're starting to describe a bit what is like the Satoshi Plus consensus. Can you go a bit more into details, like how the Satoshi Plus consensus work, and how does it really like connect the Core chain, which is an EVM layer 1, and the Bitcoin layer 1?
Yeah, so how to think about it is, Satoshi Plus is kind of the fundamental thing that differentiates Core from a lot of other chains. It's very unique. I think we're going to talk about the chain itself and where we're at, but don't want to get into all the metrics just yet. I think we'll have a chance to talk about that. But how the consensus works is, you can think of it as you have limited set of validators on the Core chain. Kiln happens to run one amongst many other great groups. And if you think about this limited set of validators, they're basically elected every day. There's like a limited amount of spots, and then every day there's like an election to choose the validators who will produce blocks and secure the chain each day. How they're elected each day, they're basically given a score, and that score is calculated based on, 1, how much Core has been staked to their validator, 2, how much Bitcoin has been staked to their validator, and then 3, how much hash rate from mining pools has been delegated to their validator. So between those 3 really hard to get resources, we basically come up with a score, and the validator with the highest score, so it has the most of all 3 of those, or the highest amount amongst the 3, they basically get stack ranked. And basically the top validators are elected each day based on that score. And that's what basically helps choose validators and secure the network, and makes the network very strong and secure, as opposed to a sole proof of stake chain, which could be gamified by the foundation or certain folks. In this sense, you have to actually attract 3 very difficult things to get elected as a validator.
Okay, so you can get a Core delegated to your validator. You can get Bitcoin staked to your validator. You can also get hash power delegated to your validator. Do you need the 3? Is there one more important than the other?
You don't necessarily need the 3. You could have a lot of hash rate and a lot of Core, and you may be able to squeeze in, but it's very difficult. You kind of need to have a section of all 3. Right now, the weightings, can change over time. There's a bit slightly more weight to hash rate, initially with miners, but generally they're pretty equally weighted. And so what that, so what that does is it basically spreads out the difficulty of getting a validator on Core And it's very difficult to take over the network because it's very difficult to get hash rates, very difficult to get hundreds or thousands of Bitcoin, and then it's very difficult to acquire a core at scale. So if you think about it, it's and then to get access to every validator just makes the network very hard and secure and difficult to play around with.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So you need to have you need to try your best to have all three pieces of the equation.
Yeah, and the other key piece to that is bringing Bitcoin into the ecosystem, right? So a lot of initial attempts were kind of parasitic to Bitcoin. It either like increase fees or make it more difficult for miners, right? Or add additional costs to miners, which they don't want. This setup's very different. It's a second emission for miners. They can monetize the hash rate that they're producing on the Bitcoin blockchain and use it to vote for validators on the core blockchain, basically secure another chain with the hash they're already creating. And that brings them into the network and aligns the interests of Bitcoin stakeholders with core. And then secondly, it's the same thing with stakers, right? We've brought a native yield to Bitcoin for the first time, brings Bitcoiners into the ecosystem. And then maybe over time, they'll dabble with LSTs or bring their Bitcoin on chain. But for now, they can actually put their Bitcoin to work and help secure another chain that's fully aligned with Bitcoin.
Got it. And from your practical standpoint, I think it's clear to the audience how delegating core could look like. Can you explain a bit how a miner can delegate hashing power, for example? And then we'll go a bit deeper into Bitcoin staking.
Yeah, so I'll keep it fairly high level because we talked to some of the largest pools. Right now, we already have about 55% of all of Bitcoin's hashes delegating to core blockchain, which is awesome. And let's just say there's likely going to be more coming very soon, which is very exciting for the core blockchain because that, again, just strengthens the network, the more hash that comes online. So how it would work is, let's just use simple examples and speak at a high level. So let's say a mining pool produces 10 exahashes today, right, on the Bitcoin network, and they produced a couple Bitcoin blocks. What they can do with those 10 exahashes is they can delegate them. They can split it up. They can delegate all 10 to one validator. They can do 1 exahash, 1 to a specific validator. And why would they do that? Well, they're saying things like, hey, we really trust Kiln. We think they're good stewards to the core network. We're gonna delegate our hash to Kiln because we want them to get elected. We want them to validate blocks on core because they're a trustworthy validator. And what they do is they basically put a piece of metadata in the hash header as they produce a block. We pick that data up, and in that data it says where they're sending that hash to and an EVM address for their core rewards because they're earning some of our block emissions for delegating the hash. So at a high level, that's how it works. And it's very similar architecture to how the Bitcoin staking works as well.
Yeah. Can you go a bit into the Bitcoin staking part, please?
Yeah, happy to. So that's mining. Also, you can verify all the mining hash in the mempool on the Bitcoin network. So all of this info is public. You can see who's delegating, what blocks are. You can verify that blocks are actually being delegated. You can also see all the stats at stake.core.org, which is really cool. It lists out how many blocks have been delegated and how much hash rate. Okay, so let's move to Bitcoin staking, right? Which I think it's like Bitcoin staking edition. So yeah, today we have just shy of 8,000 Bitcoin staked. I think based on the recent price, that's like, I don't know, 550 million in Bitcoin staked. And so how does that work? How this was built is kind of the first of its kind. I think it's the only of its kind that's live and actually producing real yields at the moment, like sustainable yield that's not points. So how it works is, you have Bitcoin, you would use your normal everyday Bitcoin wallet. And what you would do is you'd go to stake.coredao.org and you would choose to delegate Bitcoin. And what that does is you are issuing a Bitcoin transaction in your own wallet, and it's built on check time lock verify. So you're basically issuing a time lock in your own Bitcoin wallet. to yourself for a specific period of time, and we'll get into more specifics. For this example, let's say 10 days, because that's the minimum. You issue a time lock to yourself. And again, in that metadata, we're explaining which validator you want to delegate to, because again, you could think of it as delegated proof of stake. You're taking your Bitcoin and you're saying, again, I really trust Kiln, so I'm voting for the Kiln validator to be elected, because we elect validators based on, again, on how much core, hash, and Bitcoin is staked to the validator. So again, what's great about this approach is it's completely non-custodial. So you never give up custody of your Bitcoin. You don't have to wrap it, bridge it, give it to anyone else. It's always in your wallet. But when you issue the time lock, you simply can't access your Bitcoin for that given period of time. You can't spend that UTXO till the time lock ends. So for example, if you time lock Bitcoin for 10 days and you stake it for 10 days, you have the peace of mind of knowing it's in your wallet, but you can't spend it or use it, right? So that's the trade-off. And then we basically, in that metadata as well, you put an EVM address and you're earning core rewards, right? And we'll talk about why it's core rewards shortly, but for staking Bitcoin and participating in Core's consensus and strengthening the network. And yeah, the approach has gone very well so far. It's paying out real yield from our daily block rewards, and it's sustainable yield. It's not paid out of treasury or any liquidity mining incentives. It's just real yield from Core's block rewards, which is pretty exciting. And it's important to note that it's basically risk-free, right? The only risk you really have here is private key risk. There's no slashing. Because you're not giving up custody, there's no smart contract risk, etc. So a lot of folks are pretty excited about products like this that are coming out, and I think Core kind of led the way with this product 6 months ago.
Okay, so you're selling Bitcoin to yourself in the future, and in the metadata you say to which validator you decide to delegate to. You say you put out an EVM address that's going to receive the core rewards, and yeah, there's no stashing risk because you're selling Bitcoin to yourself in the future. Only you can spend the UTXO. I guess the only thing that you are kind of sacrificing is the liquidity premium on your Bitcoin, right?
100%. Yeah. Because your Bitcoin is time locked, right, on the Bitcoin network. So generally, yes, that's generally how it works. In terms of paying yourself in the future, it's more so just issuing a time lock in your own wallet. So when you do that, you simply can't access your Bitcoin for 10 days, but it's still in your wallet.
Got it. And yeah, can you talk a bit about why do Bitcoin stakers earn core rewards, and what is the purpose of the core token? What could the Bitcoin stakers do with the core token that they get as rewards?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Core is a leading blockchain at this point, right? If it was just some sort of rewards token, right, that would just be some sort of kind of baseless token. The value to Core is, we haven't really talked about the blockchain, but Core really sees itself as a Bitcoin scaling layer, right? Like a proof of stake layer for Bitcoin, where ideally of this now probably 1.6 trillion in Bitcoin, you would bridge it on chain and do things on the blockchain, right? You could access things like money markets or perps protocols or a CDP protocol, stable coins, and actually do things with your Bitcoin on chain without middlemen or TradFi in the middle, which is fine, but a lot of people would like options that are completely decentralized on chain. So thus far there's a few Bitcoin scaling layers. Core is currently leading all those metrics, right? There's about 550, 600, depends on the day, 550, 600 million in on-chain TVL, has the most addresses, most protocols, most liquidity. It's basically a top, and if you just look at broad-based chains, it's becoming a top blockchain, period. So that's where the token itself accrues its value, right, and its purpose. It's the main token of the blockchain itself, which is meant for this really big opportunity of being a large scaling layer. Like our view is that there'll be more liquidity in Bitcoin, on Bitcoin chains, like more Bitcoin liquidity than there is in Ethereum in 5+ years. So we think that alone is a massive opportunity. And I know it's a bit of a long response, but that's the value of the core token, right? It's the main token of the chains, the governance token, gas token, and you can also stake it and leverage it to help secure the blockchain itself. So the two kind of work together, right? You need a flourishing ecosystem and, you know, a leading chain to drive value for core, and then basically for helping secure the chain, you're earning core, and you can also go stake that. You know, we're doing a big upgrade, which I would like to talk about, which is like dual staking. We have time. We'll jump into that maybe after this, but there's a lot that you can do with the core token itself.
Thanks a lot. No, it makes sense. Yeah, it's like ETH for Ethereum, basically.
Yeah, for the core blockchain, which is like a leading Bitcoin chain. And there's one thing I want to talk about, because if you don't mind, because it kind of blends both these questions with the staking and then the core. So there's a big update coming out in mid-November called it's like the core fusion upgrade, biggest upgrade we've had since we launched mainnet just under 2 years ago. And with that, we're going to launch a dual staking product. So what's interesting about this is, you know, there's already, like I mentioned, just shy 8,000 Bitcoin staked. Now, if you're also staking core token, right? So if you stake both of those assets, you're going to get boosted yields on Bitcoin. And what's interesting about that is it's kind of tying core, the token, basically like tying it more to the Bitcoin ecosystem, driving demand and more utility for that token to get more yield on your Bitcoin stake. We're really excited about that coming out in mid-November. So that'll be exciting too for folks that want to get super yields or boosted yields on Bitcoin. They can also stake core and earn higher yields for their Bitcoin stake, which is great. Now, it's just another great utility for the core token itself.
Actually, it's a very interesting, I think, important topic for people wanting to stake Bitcoin and core, because now they have, if they were tempted to sell their core for USD or for Bitcoin, now they're incentivized to stake their core alongside their BTC. How does the boost work? Does it increase the block reward that your validator will get? Do you get more? Do you take that from like some people that have not staked core alongside BTC? Where does the extra core come from?
Happy to share that. And I think it's like another important point to talk about why core, right? So you know, core itself, fixed supply, 2.1 billion tokens, right? With this really long emissions curve, like 81 years of block rewards. So you think of it like Bitcoin, there's block rewards every day, they half every 4 years. Core has this 81-year curve. There's a small reduction of rewards every year of about 3% till eventually there's none, and the network should subsist on fees. So it's important to note, like, the yields are coming from these block rewards and then transaction fees on core. And I think that's just important to know that the yield's actually sustainable, right? And then I'm back to the question. What was the original question? The original question was when you do dual staking, when you're staking core alongside your BTC, right, you get boosted BTC core yield on your BTC. Like, where does the boost come from? Yeah. Sorry, I was just going on so many tangents there. So agreed. So it's important to note, the reason I said that is it's a fixed emission, right? So it's important to note there won't be net new emissions to support these boosted yields, right? There's just a fixed emission schedule that's programmed since we launched mainnet that cannot be changed, right? So we can't add additional rewards to the mix. So how it works is there's like basically this rating algorithm that is, so what it's going to do is reduce stake for folks that are just solo Bitcoin staking. Those yields will actually go down, and then they'll gradually go up based on certain thresholds of how much core you're staking relative to your Bitcoin, right? And there's going to be like 2 or 3 buckets, which we're going to release publicly in our docs in the next couple of days. And then based on that, if you're in the highest tier, you get the grading algorithm basically scores that and gives you a higher percentage of the emissions within your bucket. And then as you go down the buckets, you'll earn less. So actually, Bitcoin solo yields will go down from where they are today because they're scored less than they would be if you were actually scoring core, if that makes sense.
Okay. So now the people that are staking Bitcoin, they really have, there's really like an urgency for them to stake their core reward.
Yeah. And it's up to them. It's still a risk-free yield that's going to be better than 0%. But if you want to get these boosted yields, it's highly encouraged to, go and stake core token and get a higher amount based on the grading algorithm. So that's how it'll work.
Got it. So that means that if you're a Bitcoin staker, if every Bitcoin staker starts staking their core rewards, ultimately the result will be like the same as it is today. And people that want to have an edge will have to buy core to stake them alongside their BTC.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. At a high level. And we'll see how this all rolls out. We have, a bunch of ideas of how that'll roll out, but the real focus is aiming to align, give more utility to core token and align it with the economics of Bitcoin, which is super exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we've talked a lot about like the consensus, how Bitcoin staking, core staking, delegated hash power works. We can go also to like another piece of the discussion, which is like the broader core ecosystem. Can you talk a bit about like what it's like building on core, like what type of DeFi protocol, what kind of chain usage you're seeing on the protocol, and what makes you like excited about all of this?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of exciting things, I think. So generally it's quite easy to build on core, right? It's an EVM compatible chain. So for folks familiar with Solidity, et cetera, it's kind of the most adopted language at this point. But the thinking with core is that you didn't necessarily need to recreate the wheel when there's kind of like a winning EVM ecosystem at this point, for building dApps and layers, right? So very easy to build because it follows all the Solidity and EVM standards. So folks find that very, very simple and really appreciate that. I think our docs are great. So the feedback's been well. The ecosystem itself is, a lot of folks are gravitating to core because it has the most liquidity, and it's thus far the most mature ecosystem in terms of protocols, what you can actually do. And again, like just Bitcoin liquidity. So folks are going to go where the yield opportunities are, where they can actually deploy Bitcoin on chain, and where they can earn yield and do things. And I think core just had a head start. Kind of we're building on Bitcoin before it was cool. Did Bitcoin staking before it was cool. So as a result, I think the ecosystem's a bit more mature. I think it's still really early days, but at this point, it's the leading ecosystem in terms of addresses, protocols, and liquidity. So it's at this point kind of exponentially growing because that's where most of the opportunities are on chain for folks with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I saw that the TVL like recently like skyrocketed. Like to what do you attribute this success?
I think there's just a lot of excitement around doing things with Bitcoin again. And I think core is just becoming a bit more trusted. I think it's still early. I think I mentioned core never raised outside capital. It was a bootstrap project. So, no one really knew about core when we launched in January 2023, but that's really changing now. And I think that just took a bit of time, to build up trust. But I think at the end of the day, it's because there's opportunities on core. There's a great incentive program called Ignition. The BD contributors are doing a great job getting solid builders who aren't, fly-by-night apps that really want to build on core and live in an ecosystem for a long time. And I think there's just actual great yield opportunities on core that are kind of driving those metrics. So yeah, it's a mix of a variety of things, but that's like the high level pieces, and just there's actual opportunities to earn yield and do things on chain, and that's attracting more capital. And as you know, there's a lot of Bitcoin sitting on the sidelines, waiting for opportunities.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that there is also like another important development that we could talk about is the LST BTC that could also like enable to have like more BTC staked on Core, but also like being active on the Core chain.
Yeah, LST Bitcoin's super exciting, and there's a couple other folks building in this space generally. So I think generally as a category, it's really exciting. It's kind of like this what Stake ETH did to the ETH ecosystem. So first, you've got sustainable yields coming to Bitcoin for the first time, like with Core's non-custodial staking. And then the thinking was, for folks that want access to this yield, and that's great because it's completely non-custodial, right? Like you don't have to give up your keys. There's no risks. It's done through a time lock. But there are folks that want to earn that yield and also come on chain and like use money markets or trade perps or, provide liquidity into a large liquidity hub and earn additional yield, right? When it's already got a base yield baked in, again, kind of like staked ETH, right? You can go stake your ETH on an exchange or something or some other product. But then when you had like liquid stake versions, it kind of, double down and create a lot of great economic opportunities. So that's how you can think about LST Bitcoin, right? Different trust assumptions. So it's not non-custodial. It's handled through, a very decentralized multi-sig and signing system with a bunch of trusted signers. And basically what you can do is, you're staking Bitcoin, so you're getting the base yield on your Bitcoin. But you get this on-chain asset called LST Bitcoin on Core that you can deploy into DeFi. Right. So you could go use a money market. You could go play around. You could take out a loan on a token that's accruing base yield, which kind of totally changes the economics for you. So very, very interested to see what kind of use cases will be built by different builders on Core with this asset. But that's basically the overall thinking on LST Bitcoin. That's going to be coming shortly after the Fusion upgrade on Core. So again, it's like and then how it specifically works, it's a one-to-one peg, right? So LST Bitcoin will be one-to-one peg to Bitcoin, and then that address that you hold the LST Bitcoin on will accrue Core rewards, like your actual staking rewards. So yeah, super cool design, not overly complicated with a bunch of rebasing math, and I think it's going to be exciting for on-chain opportunities because you now have like a native yield Bitcoin token that can be used in DeFi.
It's definitely very interesting. And we're also like seeing like in the broader Bitcoin L2 ecosystem, like more and more innovation of people trying to bring layer one Bitcoin into their protocol. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Talking a bit more about like Bitcoin and like what's the long-term vision of the core ecosystem with regards to Bitcoin. A lot of people talk about like the fact that Bitcoin will scale modularly, meaning that like the L1 will stay a bit ossified, and we'll start seeing like more scalability, innovation happening on the layer twos. What do you think about that, and how do you think that Core could potentially play a role there?
I think it's a good question. I try to, first of all, just like preface by saying, try to keep an open mind. Not sure how it's all going to play out, but, we'll adapt and see how this plays out over the years. Like Core is built for the very, very long term, and we have some ideas, but like the real answer, like we'll see. But here are just some thoughts. Like I generally agree with I don't know if that was your take or just like you heard that take, but I don't think the Bitcoin main chain will change all that much. It's extremely decentralized, secure. We already went through a variety of debates and forks, like now at this point, like 6-7 years ago, there were a lot of debates in the community, and this is where we ended up. Like we've kind of already done that. I think there'll be minor upgrades to help with, interchain compatibility, or, there'll be ways to potentially trustlessly bridge. We're looking at the developments in OPCAP, BitVM. There's folks like working on ZK stuff, which I think is all super exciting. But generally, like, I think that Bitcoin does a few things, right? First of all, it does need to drive more fees long term, right? To remain a sustainable network. Like secondary emissions like Core really help the miners. But truthfully, Bitcoin does need to migrate to like driving more transactional fees. So I think more usage on Bitcoin is great, but it's very limited in what it can do, right? Transaction wise and just like without having smart contracts, et cetera. So the thinking is, Bitcoin could be this really trusted settlement network, like high cost, very secure settlement network. And you may see something like a Core, et cetera, handling the brunt of like higher transaction throughput use cases, smart contracts, et cetera, with like some sort of trustless bridge. We'll see which one wins out, that settle on this really secure and decentralized network. And that provides enough fees to on top of everything else, to subsist the Bitcoin network. So we'll see how that all plays out. But, generally think we need solutions like Core to bring secondary emissions to miners, native yield to Bitcoin, the asset itself, and then on-chain opportunities and utility for Bitcoin, because you currently can't do any of that on the main chain.
Yeah, that's a super interesting take, and I'm sure that like the miners, they're very thankful for Core to exist, and they're very happy that they can get extra yield, and that they don't have to worry too much about their economic viability. Going back a bit to Bitcoin staking, in the context of this modular expansion on Bitcoin, that will see more protocols being built on top of the layer one. When you see what Bitcoin staking has unlocked for Core, do you think this is a model that will be replicated by other protocols?
Oh, that's a great question. I think so. I mean, I think so, but we'll see, because I think it depends on what kind of chains or folks need that type of economic security. And I mean, I think the thinking with Core is it's meant to be a Bitcoin scaling layer, like a proof of stake layer for Bitcoin. So it made obvious sense to align and incentivize Bitcoiners to participate in the network and use that as part of its security design from the start, right? It may not be the fit for like a variety of other chains. We'll see, especially folks that have already launched and that have already done full tokenomics, et cetera. So I think for things that are Bitcoin aligned or looking to create their tokenomics from scratch, I think it's a blueprint that many will look at. Unsure about the exact fit of what it brings, unless it's meant to be some sort of Bitcoin aligned chain or DApp or protocol. So I'm curious to see. I think it'd be great because there's so much Bitcoin, right? So there's a ton of opportunity to ideally secure multiple things, or delegate over time, and we'll see where that goes. But I think there's a lot of complications to taking that much volume, just because the market cap's so high. There's so much security budget. So I think Core's done great because it's sustainable yield and can take a lot of Bitcoin, and we'll see what others do with that blueprint. I think it's just pretty exciting, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Core has taken already a lot of Bitcoin and has proven that it can maintain interesting yields for all of that Edo BTC. Let's hope that other protocols will be able to maintain that as well. I would love if you can talk a bit about like the other Bitcoin staking protocols that exist out there. I think the main one is probably Babylon. That is trying to be basically like the eigenlayer of BTC. Do you think something like that makes sense, and having this kind of marketplace to go and take the Bitcoin economic security is something that is going to be valuable for all of these protocols? Or do you think maybe some of them could build it themselves, or this specific technical model will not fit for most of the applications trying to build on top of Bitcoin?
I think it's a good question. First of all, yeah, I think it's kind of like us in Babylon that I've staking thus far. I think the way you described it makes total sense. And I see Core as like native Bitcoin staking, almost like ETH staking, and then Babylon at the moment, kind of eigenlayer restaking platform where we authenticate this Bitcoin and for folks that want to use the security in their chains. I'm curious. I think that Bitcoin's the apex asset in Web3. If you wanted to secure something I would think you'd want to use Bitcoin at this point as opposed to ETH, but I think it depends on the alignment, kind of to like my previous thing. People who are building in the ETH ecosystem, etc., probably want to use ETH, right? Whereas if you're aligning or building something in Bitcoin or something Bitcoin aligned, or maybe it's just a philosophical reason, would probably go Bitcoin, because it's like this apex proven asset that's proven itself to be very secure. So I think with like that latter point, I think there'll be a lot of opportunities, ideally to secure things with Bitcoin. I think it's great to have tools to be able to do that as opposed to do it yourself. I think the big question will just be, there's a lot of Bitcoin, will those yields, how long is it going to take to build up sustainable yields or get some traction on these things? Because if you look at Eigenlayer, I think they're still pushing for traction and additional yield. I think they'll hopefully get there long term, but it's just, I think, a longer term play than people think. So overall, I think very exciting. I think anything using Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin is a good development, and providing yield to Bitcoin is a great development because it brings awareness to Bitcoin staking. So I think at this point, it's kind of like Core and Babylon. Those are the folks that are most spoken about. I think you'll hopefully, probably see others coming up soon as well.
Yeah. And kind of closing on this this entire, like, this broader, like, Bitcoin vision, I think also, like, what the audience is probably aware of by now is that there's been some technological improvements. There's a lot more things you can do with your Bitcoin, but this is a consequence of something much bigger, which is a cultural shift and a cultural change within the Bitcoin ecosystem. Of course, we still have, like, our beloved Bitcoin maxis, but we also have people that are a bit more experimental with the way they approach Bitcoin, with the way they think about Bitcoin block space, and with, like, what BTC can bring to the broader ecosystem. Can you talk a bit about this cultural shift, and where do you think it could take us in, let's say, like, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. So just try and be a bit more succinct this time. But yeah, I think first of all, a lot of people got burned by some bad actors that were more centralized. Like if you think of the BlockFi Celsius situation, I think a lot of Bitcoiners got burned, learned some hard lessons, and were hella skeptical of doing anything with their Bitcoin. And that was like kind of the prevailing view for quite some time. And with that said, I think it opened the doors to this like heavy Bitcoin maxi take that kind of took over the sound waves on Twitter, et cetera. And Pseudo represented Bitcoin for quite a few years, but didn't necessarily represent everyone who holds Bitcoin. There's a lot of folks that started in Bitcoin, but are very active in Ethereum, Solana, and just generally optimistic on crypto. They obviously favor Bitcoin, but they still experiment and do things on chain. And I don't think we're closed off to opportunities with their Bitcoin. It's just the fact that people got burned and then the megaphone got kind of taken by maxis, which is fine. And then I think with kind of the important Taproot upgrade, it brought some additional utility to what you could do with ordinals and then runes. I think that brought fees to the network, which alleviated some stress around fees and what could be done. And I think that just opened Pandora's box and around what could be done with Bitcoin. I think other voices then entered the arena, and here we are today. And I think it's just really exciting because I don't know if necessarily it was always like this. It's just you couldn't really build on Bitcoin for the longest time, even though people tried and wanted to. And it's just, a lot of builders and the best minds went to ETH for a period of time based on everything we just mentioned. I think a lot are coming back. So I'm just super stoked about that. It's like coming home in some ways, and coming to the highest value Apex asset, and like now building all these cool use cases. It's a pretty exciting time for Bitcoin and anyone building in Bitcoin. There's definitely a shift there. Yeah.
I think it's a great way to end this. I think to close this, like, I would love for you to share like a place where listeners can get involved with Core, learn more about Core, and really like try to better understand like what you guys are building there.
Yeah, appreciate that. So the best place is Twitter. The Twitter is great. Huge following. Community is super active. So it's CoreDAO _ORG. So CoreDAO _org. That's the best place. And then from there, we've got links to our Discord, which has, I think, over 250,000 people, our website, information about our current user incentive program, which is Core Ignition, ignition.coredao.org. So a lot of resources there. Best place to start is Twitter.
Yeah. I can prefer, but I was the witness of the strength of the core Twitter community. It's
they're solid.
Crazy. Yeah.
Fair launch works.
Yeah, I guess. Last question before we leave. Outside of Bitcoin, outside of Core, what is one thing that you're excited about in Web3?
I think there's a lot of talk about stablecoins. A lot of times, like product market fit, Bitcoin, stablecoins, obviously a few DeFi protocols, but most people would point to stablecoins and then Bitcoin as a store of value. So I think stablecoins are still super early. It's like crazy dollarization. I think there'll be, yield-bearing stablecoins will become more of a thing. I think there's going to be a next wave of stablecoins that are super interesting and valuable to folks all around the world. And I'm excited to see where that goes. A lot of people are entering into the stablecoin game, and you would have thought that this market's over, this game's over, but it's clearly a massive opportunity, and that's why it's pulling in some big folks to launch stablecoins. So I'm excited to see where that goes over the next couple of years still, and what kind of opportunities that opens up for countries around the world and people around the world.
Yeah, I think, I completely agree with you. Stablecoin is for me probably like the second top use case of crypto. And it's funny because at Kiln, we're actually betting a lot on stablecoins. We're building a Kiln DeFi product that helps you get better yield on your stablecoin. Helps you be in contact with the stablecoin issuer and try to get also the money market yield that they're getting. So
love that.
It's
really, gotta launch that on Core, by the way. But that sounds awesome.
Yeah, we're going one chain at a time, but we'll definitely get to Core. You guys are not so low on the TVL list, so I'm pretty confident we'll get.
That's awesome that you guys are building like that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, at Kiln we want to be the central point of yield and rewards in crypto.
Yeah.
So for us, it's really important that we tackle every asset that can earn these, basically. Anyways.
Yeah, next up stable coins.
Sorry?
Next up you have all the native stake assets, now Bitcoin with Core, and then I guess stable coins, right?
Yeah, who knows where it will take us. Maybe next up it will be RWAs, maybe it will be gold stable coins, who knows?
Yeah, or different RWAs, right?
Yeah. So Brendon, thank you so much for your time. I've personally really enjoyed the conversation. I think I'm gonna see you pretty soon in Denver.
Prague.
Yeah. Oh, in Prague. Yeah, in Prague.
I think in Prague. Yeah, in Emergence. I think we're recreating a really awesome Bitcoin panel we did. That'll be fun.
Yeah. So looking forward to seeing you there, and to the audience.
Likewise, man.
Yeah. To the audience, I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
I really appreciate you guys hosting and inviting us. Thanks for the time, Edgar. Take it easy.
Pleasure, Brendon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.